The human diplomat's words cut through the Galactic Council chamber like a blast from a railgun. "If you alien fucks invade us, we will end you. Earth is ready for war." Major Jason Williams snarled, his finger jabbing at the assembled alien dignitaries like the barrel of a loaded weapon. 5 years had passed since the disastrous human-Centauri conflict. 5 years of a tense, fragile armistice between Earth and the galaxy's major powers. Officially, it was peace. But behind closed doors, the Galactic Council plotted against the upstart humans, seeking any excuse to cut the troublesome Terrans down to size. Williams knew he was walking into a nest of vipers as his shuttle approached the sprawling space station that served as the Council's headquarters. He could still smell the smoke, still hear the screams from the last time alien ships darkened Earth's skies. The Centauri assault claimed billions of human lives, including Williams's father and brother. Humanity prevailed, but at a terrible cost. The Council races grudgingly sued for peace, but loathed the fierce, uncompromising apes who refused any armistice that didn't heavily favor Earth. As his shuttle docked, Williams saw the contempt etched on alien faces, heard the whispers condemning humans' aggression and bloodthirst. In the Council chambers, that contempt turned to outright hostility. The Daxamite ambassador, a sneering insectoid named Kraxon, called a snap vote to place crippling sanctions on Earth's fleet. Punishment for human crimes in the Centauri War. A war they started by killing millions of civilians in a surprise attack. "How savages had your chance to join the galactic community as equals," Kraxon hissed, when Williams angrily objected. "If you won't accept your place, we will put you in it." The human's fingers curled into fists. He leaned forward, meeting the alien's compound eyes. "Listen closely. I'll only say this once. We didn't start the last war, but we finished it. If you come for Earth, it will be the last thing you ever do. The gloves are off now. We're ready for you this time." Shock and outrage rippled through the Council, but Williams just turned and strode from the chamber, jaw clenched. The message had been sent. The line in the sand had been drawn. If the aliens wanted war, they would get it. And this time humanity would end the threat once and for all, no matter the cost. Major Williams slammed the shuttle door shut behind him, his heart pounding. He punched in the code for a secure comlink to Earth Defense Command. The screen flickered to life, revealing the grizzled face of General Graves. "Report, Major," Graves barked. "I take it the Council meeting didn't go well." Williams shook his head. "They're out for blood, sir. That bastard Kraxon rammed through a vote for sanctions, punishment for our supposed crimes in the Centauri War." Graves snorted. "Typical. Those Daxamite roaches have had it out for us since we kicked their mandibles in the last dust-up." "There's more, General," Williams said. "I think they're planning to make a move on our colonies near their border. Create some kind of buffer zone to keep us in check." The older man stroked his chin. "Our intel suggests the same. Luckily, we've got an ace up our sleeve. The eggheads at Lockheed Boeing have cooked up a new class of stealth frigate, fast, heavily armed, and invisible to Daxamite sensors." Williams raised an eyebrow. "Sounds promising." "Promising? Son, these babies are a goddamn nightmare for anyone stupid enough to tangle with us. We've got a squadron of them deployed near the colonies under Captain Hawkins, your old Spec Ops buddy." "Spectre? Shit, the Daxamites won't know what hit them if he's on the case." Graves leaned forward. "Listen carefully, Jason. I need you to attend a little soiree at the Daxamite embassy on Zaloria Prime tonight." He held up a small data chip. "This contains evidence that Kraxon was behind the sabotage of the Monroe Doctrine, the freighter that sparked this whole mess. I want you to slip it to that bug during the party." Williams took the chip, his jaw clenched. "With pleasure, sir." Hours later, Williams tugged at the collar of his dress uniform as he wove through the crowd of dignitaries at the embassy gala. Snatches of conversation drifted past him. Are the human soldier, quaint that they still cling to such primitive concepts as honor and bravery. One shudders to imagine the fate of the galaxy if those apes had free rein. He gritted his teeth and scanned the room for Kraxon. There, The Daxamite ambassador was holding court near the bar, his carapace glinting in the light. Williams made his way over, snagging 2 glasses of wine from a passing server. "Ambassador Craxon," he said, handing the insectoid a drink. "A pleasure." Craxon's mandibles clicked. "Major Williams, I'm surprised you had the audacity to show your face here after that little outburst in the council chamber." Williams smiled tightly. He leaned in close, pressing the data chip into Craxon's claw as he did. "We know what you did," he whispered. "The Monroe Doctrine. Back off or this goes public." Craxon stiffened, his compound eyes blazing with fury. For a moment Williams thought the Daxamite would strike him, but then Craxon mastered himself and hissed, "You dare threaten me, ape? You have no idea the forces you are dealing with." Williams stepped back, still smiling. "Enjoy the party, Ambassador." He turned to leave, his heart hammering against his ribs. Almost there, almost. The explosion rocked the building, sending guests screaming and tumbling to the floor. Williams whirled, reaching instinctively for a sidearm that wasn't there. Daxamite security guards were swarming the ballroom, weapons drawn. Shots rang out. A lone gunman, a human, lay crumpled and bloody on the marble. Craxon was shouting, his voice rising above the chaos. "An assassination attempt. By a human terrorist, this is an act of war." Williams turned and ran, shoving his way through the panicked crowd. This was a setup. It had to be. But that didn't matter now. All that mattered was getting back to his shuttle and warning Earth. As he sprinted across the landing pad, the sick realization hit him. The fuse had been lit. The fire was coming. And if Earth wasn't ready, everything would burn. Williams slammed his fist on the comms panel as the shuttle raced away from Zaloria Prime. Graves's face flickered onto the screen. "General, it was a setup. The bombing, the assassin, all of it. Craxon played us like a damn fiddle," Williams snarled. Graves' brow furrowed. "I just got word from our intel boys, that shooter, 2-bit crook named Jorgo Sleck, not so much as a parking ticket on his record until today. Daxamites must have hired him to take the fall." "Craxon was quick on the trigger, sir. Called it an act of war before the body was even cold." The shuttle suddenly shuddered as alarms blared. The pilot shouted over his shoulder, "Daxamite warships, they're firing on us!" Williams braced himself as the shuttle juked and jinked, trying to evade the incoming plasma blasts. But it was a losing battle. They were sitting ducks out here. "Shields at 20%, the pilot yelled. "We can't take much more of this." Just as Williams was about to give the order to abandon ship, a new voice crackled over the comms. "Heard you could use a ride, Jace. Hop in." 3 sleek, angular shapes decloaked off the shuttle's port side, spitting blue plasma at the Daxamite pursuers. The Wraith frigates had arrived. Williams grinned. "Spectre, you beautiful bastard, your timing is impeccable." "I aim to please. Now get your ass aboard before those bugs turn you into space dust." The shuttle slid into the docking bay of Hawkins' frigate, the Phantasm, as its sister ships laid down covering fire. In moments they were racing away, the Daxamite ships receding behind them. On the Phantasm's bridge, Williams found Hawkins hunched over a flickering holodisplay. The news from Earth was grim. Surprise attacks reported on human colonies in sectors 12, 15, and 23. The Daxamites are citing the embassy bombing as justification for a full-scale offensive. Earth has formally declared war in response. Casualties are... Hawkins slammed his fist on the console, cutting off the transmission. "Craxon's been planning this for months. The colonies won't last long against a sustained assault." Williams studied the star map, an idea forming in his mind. Maybe they won't have to. Look at the Daxamite supply lines, overstretched, undefended. If we hit them hard and fast... "The colonies might just hold out till the main fleet arrives," Hawkins finished. "I like the way you think, Jace." "There's more," Williams said. He tapped a glowing red icon on the map. "Craxon's flagship, the Deathbringer. Our intel puts it right in the middle of the supply chain. And I'll bet my last credit that bug-eyed bastard still has the Monroe Doctrine evidence aboard." Hawkins's eyes narrowed. You want to capture Kraxon. And the data. We bring those to the Council, prove the Daxamites manipulated this whole war. We could turn the other races against them. It's risky, Jace. The colonies are counting on us. If we go after Kraxon, we might not make it back in time to help. Williams clenched his jaw, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The colonies or Kraxon. His duty or his vengeance. There was no easy choice. But maybe there was a right one. Set course to intercept the Deathbringer, he said at last. We're ending this one way or another. As the stars blurred into lines of light beyond the view screen, Williams could only hope he hadn't just doomed them all. The Wraith frigates streaked through the void, their hulls barely visible against the starry backdrop. On the bridge of the Phantasm, Williams and Hawkins huddled over the holo display, the ghostly blue light casting shadows across their faces. "We'll use the stealth systems to get in close," Hawkins said, tracing a finger along the projected course. "Then we'll launch the boarding pods and hit them hard and fast." Williams nodded. Kraxon won't know what hit him. We'll have that bug in chains and the evidence in hand before he can blink all four of his eyes. It's risky, Jace. We're betting everything on this one play. I know, but we don't have a choice. It's this or... The proximity alarm shrieked, cutting off Williams' words. He snapped his head up to the tactical display, his stomach dropping at the sight. "Daxamite stealth fighters. A whole damn squadron," Hawkins shouted. "They're on an intercept course." Williams cursed under his breath. The Daxamites had stolen that cloaking tech from the Centauri during the war. Now it was coming back to bite humanity in the ass. The space around the frigates erupted in plasma fire as the fighters screamed in, their angular black shapes shimmering into view as they closed to attack range. The frigates' point defense cannons roared to life, filling the void with crisscrossing beams of searing light. But the fighters were too fast, too agile. They danced through the defensive fire like ghosts, pummeling the human ships with plasma torpedoes. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Crewmen screamed as the impacts tossed them like ragdolls. Damage reports flooded in as the frigates reeled under the onslaught. "Hull breach in Section 12. Shields down to 20%. We're venting atmosphere on decks 4 and 5. Hawkins gripped the edge of the hollow table, his knuckles white. "Evasive pattern Delta 5. Keep those guns firing." The frigates lurched and spun, their engines straining as they tried to shake the attackers. The space around them blazed with the fire of their point defense cannons. Williams watched the tactical display in desperation as one by one the frigates winked out, consumed by the Daxamite assault. But Hawkins refused to yield. His hands flew over the controls as he barked orders to the crew and the other ships. The Phantasm twisted and rolled, lashing out with every gun it had. The skill of the human pilots began to tell as the fighters fell one by one, torn apart by the frigate's relentless fire. "We're through," Hawkins yelled as the last fighter vanished in a ball of plasma. "Plot a course for—" His voice trailed off. The tactical display showed only 3 friendly contacts. The rest of the frigates were gone. Williams swallowed hard. The cost had been high, too high. But they had to press on. The colonies were counting on them. "Set course for Kraxon's flagship," he ordered, his voice grim. "Maximum burn." As the Phantasm and her 2 remaining sisters hurtled towards their target, a new contact appeared on the long-range sensors. A massive energy signature, unlike anything Williams had ever seen. "What the hell is that?" Hawkins muttered, his brow furrowed. A cold knot formed in Williams's gut as the readings came in. He recognized the energy pattern. He'd seen it in classified briefings, in the darkest nightmares of Earth's top scientists. "It's a 0-point bomb," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Big enough to vaporize a planet." Hawkins' head snapped up, his eyes wide. "And it's headed—" "Straight for the colonies," Williams finished. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The comms panel blinked. Incoming transmission. Williams slammed his fist on the button, Kraxon's sneering face filling the screen. "Major Williams, how kind of you to join us." The Daxamite's mandibles twitched in a mocking approximation of a smile. As you can see, the game is over. Earth has lost. "Craxon, you bastard," William snarled. "If you think we'll let you—" "You don't have a choice, ape. The 0-point bomb is already on its way to your precious colonies. If you try to stop it, I'll detonate it immediately. Millions will die." Craxon leaned forward, his compound eyes glittering. "But if you surrender now, I'll deactivate the bomb. All Earth has to do is submit to Daxamite rule. A small price to pay for your survival, don't you think?" Williams's mind raced. Craxon had them dead to rights. If they went after the bomb, he'd set it off. If they surrendered, humanity would be enslaved. There were no good options. But then a flicker of hope, a desperate gamble. Craxon's words echoed in his mind. "If you surrender now, I'll deactivate the bomb." The Daxamite was the key. If they could capture him— He met Hawkins' eyes across the holotable. An unspoken understanding passed between them, a grim resolve. "Spectre," William said, "take us in. We're boarding that flagship." Hawkins nodded. He turned to the crew, his voice booming across the bridge. "All hands, prepare for close assault. Marines, gear up and get to the pods. We're taking the fight to the enemy." As the crew scrambled to battle stations, Hawkins gripped William's shoulder. "I'll lead the boarding party myself. We'll get that bug-eyed son of a bitch and make him stop the bomb." Williams clasped his friend's arm. "Give him hell, Jake. I'll keep the big picture from up here." Hawkins flashed a tight grin. "Just like old times, eh?" Then he was gone, sprinting for the drop pods. Moments later, Williams watched on the viewscreen as the Phantasm and her sister ships screamed towards Craxon's flagship, the dagger-shaped craft growing larger by the second. The Daxamite ship opened fire, plasma bolts and missiles streaking towards the frigates. The human ships jinked and wove, their ECM suites working overtime to confuse the enemy targeting. Hawkins was buying time, drawing the Daxamite's attention so his boarding party could strike. With a bone-jarring clang, the Phantasm slammed into the flagship's hull, the magnetic clamps locking on. Shape charges blew the airlock, and Hawkins was in, his Marines pouring through the breach like wolves into the fold. On the frigate's bridge, Williams could only watch and listen as the boarding party fought their way through the flagship. The sounds of close combat echoed over the comms, the bark of flechette rifles, the sizzle of plasma, the screams of the dying. Hawkins' voice crackled in Williams's ear, punctuated by gunfire. "Deck 4 secure, pushing towards the bridge!" The flagship shuddered under the frigate's guns. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches, bodies, both human and Daxamite, spilling into the void. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing friend and foe alike to stumble. But Hawkins pushed on, an implacable force. Bulkhead by bulkhead, deck by deck, they fought their way towards Craxon, towards humanity's last hope. Williams gripped the edge of the holotable, his heart pounding. The colonies, the evidence, the fate of the war, it all hung in the balance. Success or failure, victory or defeat, it would all be decided in the next few desperate minutes. "Godspeed, Jake," he whispered. "Godspeed." Plasma bolts sizzled past Hawkins' head as he ducked into cover. The Daxamite troops were putting up a hell of a fight, turning every corridor into a killing field. But the Marines were just as stubborn. They inched forward, trading shots and grenades with the enemy, leaving a trail of scorch marks and bodies in their wake. "Sarge!" Hawkins shouted over the din. "Get a charge on that bulkhead. We need to keep moving." The sergeant nodded, sprinting forward under the cover of his squad's fire. He slapped a breaching charge on the sealed door and dove back into cover. The explosion ripped through the corridor, sending shrapnel and smoke billowing. Hawkins was up and moving before the dust settled, his rifle spitting death. They burst onto the bridge, rifles sweeping for targets, but there was no one there. Consoles flickered and sparked, abandoned. Hawkins swore under his breath. Craxon was gone. He strode to the central console, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship's schematics flashed on the screen, along with a countdown timer. Hawkins' blood ran cold. The bomb. It was already armed and on its way. And Craxon's control over it? A damn lie. "Sir," one of the Marines called out, "I've got an idea. If we can overload the reactor—" Hawkins followed his gaze, realization dawning. The flagship. They could use it as a weapon, ram it into the bomb, but the cost— He punched in a command hailing the phantasm. Williams's face filled the screen, tight with worry. "Jace, the bomb's live. Craxon lied. He never had control over it." Williams cursed, slamming his fist on the console. "Then what do we do? The colonies—" "We use the flagship, overload the reactor and detonate it right on top of the bomb. It's the only way." Silence stretched between them, heavy with understanding. Williams closed his eyes, the weight of command etched in every line of his face. "Do it," he said at last. "I'll order the frigates to fall back, and Hawkins, Godspeed." The screen went dark. Hawkins turned to his Marines, his brothers and sisters in arms. They looked back at him, determination in their eyes. They knew what had to be done. "You heard the man," Hawkins said. "Let's get to that reactor. Move." They raced through the corridors, alarms blaring and lights flickering. The ship shuddered as the frigates poured fire into its hull, drawing the Daxamites' attention away from the saboteurs in their midst. In the reactor room, Hawkins and his team worked feverishly, bypassing safeties and overriding fail-safes. The reactor thrummed with barely contained power, ready to blow at the slightest provocation. William's voice crackled over the comm. "Hawkins, Craxon's escape pod just launched. I'm hailing him now, demanding surrender." Hawkins just shook his head. That arrogant bastard would never surrender. He'd gloat and mock, secure in his victory. The comm channel opened, Craxon's sneering voice filling the room. "You've lost, Ape. Even if you destroy the bomb, you'll die with it, and there will be no one left to reveal the truth of our plan." William's reply was cold as the void. "I've already transmitted the evidence to Earth. Your treachery will be exposed, Craxon. You've failed." A scream of rage, then silence. Hawkins allowed himself a grim smile. Williams had outplayed the Daxamite at his own game. Now the ship lurched as the flagship neared the bomb, the proximity alarms shrieking. It was now or never. William's voice came over the comm again, strained with emotion. "Jake, are you sure about this? There's got to be another way." Hawkins looked around at his Marines, at the determined set of their jaws, the fire in their eyes. They knew the price of freedom. They were ready to pay it. "It's been an honor, Jason," he said. "See you on the other side." He cut the link before Williams could reply. There was nothing left to say. Hawkins' hand hovered over the reactor controls, a strange calm settling over him. One last act of defiance, one last stand for humanity. The world went white. The flagship exploded in a searing flash of light, a miniature supernova that engulfed the bomb in its fiery embrace. On the bridge of the Phantasm, Williams and his crew shielded their eyes from the glare, the sensors confirming the bomb's destruction. Cheers erupted on the bridge, the crew clapping each other on the back, hugging and laughing in relief. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd saved the colonies. But Williams couldn't join in the celebration. He stared at the fading light of the explosion, the ghost of his friend's sacrifice etched in his mind's eye. The cost had been too high, far too high. He closed his eyes, taking a moment to compose himself. There would be time to grieve later. For now there was still work to be done. "Set course for Earth," he ordered, his voice steady. "We're going home." As the Phantasm leapt into warp, leaving the battlefield behind, Williams made a silent vow. He would ensure that Hawkins' sacrifice was not in vain. He would expose the Daxamites' treachery, rally humanity and its allies. They would face the challenges ahead together, united and strong. The galaxy would never again underestimate the strength and resolve of humanity. Hawkins and his Marines had made sure of that. The comms panel blinked, and General Graves' face filled the screen. His expression was grim. "Major Williams, we have a situation. The Daxamites have launched an all-out assault on our colonies in retaliation for Craxon's death." Williams leaned forward. How bad is it? The colonies are holding for now, but they're outgunned and outnumbered. The main fleet is still en route. You and the Wraith frigates are all they've got. Williams nodded, his jaw set. Understood, sir. We'll hold the line. See that you do, Major. Those colonists are counting on you. Graves out. The screen went dark. Williams turned to his crew. You heard the man. Set course for the colonies, maximum burn. It's time to show the Daxamites what we're made of. The Phantasm leapt into warp, the stars blurring into streaks of light. As they dropped out of warp at the colonies, the scale of the battle became clear. The frigate squadrons were heavily engaged, weaving in and out of the Daxamite formations. The space around the colonies was lit up with the flashes of weapons fire and the blooms of exploding ships. Williams hailed the other frigates. This is Major Williams. I'm assuming command. Form up on me, wedge formation. The frigates acknowledged, falling into position behind the Phantasm. Williams studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The Daxamites were using their numbers to try and box in the human ships, to negate their speed and stealth advantages. They had to change the game. All ships, listen up. We're going to draw them away from the colonies into the asteroid fields. We'll use the rocks for cover, hit them from all sides. The frigates broke formation, splitting into pairs and trios as they raced towards the asteroids. The Daxamites took the bait, surging after them like hounds after foxes. And so began a deadly game of cat and mouse, the frigates darting in and out of the rocks, ambushing the Daxamites before fadding away again. Williams led from the front, the Phantasm dancing through the asteroids, its guns never silent. They took out a Daxamite cruiser with a daring strafing run, skimming so close to the larger ship that they could see the rivets in its hull. But the Daxamites kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. The frigates fought with everything they had, but one by one they fell. Williams watched the lights wink out on his tactical display, each one representing lives lost, friends and comrades making the ultimate sacrifice. Soon it was just the Phantasm, alone and battered, facing down a wall of Daxamite ships. Williams gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. This was it. This was where they would make their stand. But just as the Daxamites closed in for the kill, a massive warp rift tore open behind them. Earth's main fleet surged through, hundreds of ships, fresh and hungry for battle. They fell upon the Daxamites like wolves, their guns ripping into the alien ships. Caught between the fleet and the Phantasm, the Daxamites broke and ran, fleeing back towards their own space. Cheers erupted on the bridge of the Phantasm as Earth's ships moved to secure the colonies. But Williams didn't cheer. He stared at the tactical display, at the blinking lights that represented the fallen frigates and their crews. They had won the day, but at a terrible cost. And he knew deep in his bones that this was not the end. The Daxamites would be back, stronger and smarter. Humanity had shown its teeth today, and the galaxy would take notice. The real fight, Williams realized, was just beginning. The celebration was short-lived as Williams' promotion ceremony wrapped up. He had barely pinned on his new colonel rank when an intelligence officer rushed in with an alarming report. Williams scanned the document, his brow furrowing. The Daxamites were coming. A massive fleet was assembling, far larger than the one that had attacked the colonies. Their target was Earth itself. Williams strode into the command center, the room buzzing with activity. Generals and admirals huddled around the central holotable, their faces grim. "Colonel Williams, good timing," General Graves said. "We just received word from the Galactic Council. They're offering support, but it will take time to mobilize their forces." Williams nodded, studying the fleet dispositions on the display. "So we're on our own for now." "We're as ready as we can be," an admiral said. "The orbital defenses are at full strength and every ship we have is in position." A comms officer looked up from his console. "Sir, Colonel Williams is being summoned to a briefing in the secure facility." Williams exchanged a glance with Graves, who shrugged. "Better see what they want. We'll hold the fort here." Williams took a lift down to the subterranean levels of the command complex. Armed guards scanned his ID, before ushering him into a dimly lit conference room. A group of scientists and intelligence officers were waiting, their expressions somber. "Colonel Williams, thank you for coming," a grey-haired scientist said. "I'm Dr. Novak, head of the Craxon Wreckage Analysis Team." "So you've found something," Williams said. It wasn't a question. Novak nodded, activating a holographic display. Schematics of Daxamite ships and weapons rotated in the air. The Daxamites' technology, their stealth systems, their weapons, even the zero-point energy bomb, they're not of Daxamite origin. Williams leaned forward, studying the images. "What do you mean?" "They're too advanced, too sophisticated. The Daxamites are good, but they're not this good. This technology bears the hallmarks of an ancient civilization, one that disappeared thousands of years ago." An intelligence officer spoke up. "We believe the Daxamites have found a cache of this lost technology. That's how they've made such dramatic leaps in such a short time." Williams felt a chill run down his spine. If they found this much, what else might they have? "That's the problem," Novak said. "We don't know, and they may not be the only ones who have access to this technology." The implications hung heavy in the air. The Daxamites were even more dangerous than they had thought, and the balance of power in the galaxy could be about to shift in unpredictable ways. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as a voice came over the intercom. "Alert, alert. Daxamite fleet detected in Earth orbit. This is not a drill. All personnel to battle stations." Williams was already moving, racing back to the command center. The holotable showed a swarm of red icons surrounding Earth. The Daxamite fleet was massive, easily 10 times the size of the one that had attacked the colonies. And at its heart was a ship unlike any Williams had ever seen. A behemoth, dwarfing even the largest Earth battleships. A dreadnought. "My God," someone whispered. "Look at the size of that thing." Earth's defenses, represented by blue icons, moved to engage. But as the two fleets met, it quickly became clear that it was no contest. The Daxamite ships tore through Earth's lines like they weren't even there. Their weapons bypassed shields, slicing through hulls like paper. Earth ships exploded by the dozens, then the hundreds. Williams gripped the edge of the holotable, his knuckles white. This wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. "Our weapons aren't even scratching them," an admiral said, his voice shaking. "What do we do?" Williams stared at the dreadnought, an idea forming in his mind. A desperate, reckless idea. "The briefing," he said. "If that ship is using the same ancient technology, it might have the same weaknesses. If we can get a team on board, access its systems—" "You want to board it?" Graves said incredulously. "That's suicide." "What choice do we have? We can't beat them like this. We need a game-changer, and that ship is it." Graves held Williams' gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "Do it. Take whoever you need. We'll buy you as much time as we can." Williams was already moving, calling up rosters on his display. He needed the best, the brightest, the most daring, those with nothing to lose and everything to gain. As the dreadnought loomed on the view screen, Williams felt a strange calm settle over him. This was it, the most important mission of his life. The fate of Earth, of the human race, rested on his shoulders. Failure was not an option. The shuttle shuddered as it docked with the dreadnought's airlock, the clamps locking into place with a metallic clang. Williams checked his weapon one last time, the weight of the plasma rifle familiar in his hands. He glanced at his team, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the odds, knew that this was likely a one-way trip. But they also knew what was at stake. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. They moved forward cautiously, weapons at the ready. The ship's interior was unlike anything Williams had ever seen, a twisted blend of organic and mechanical, with pulsing conduits and flickering screens embedded in the fleshy walls. Suddenly, a barrage of plasma fire erupted from the shadows. Daxamite troops, their armor a sickly blend of metal and chitin, poured out from side passages. Williams and his team returned fire, the confined space lit by the crisscrossing beams of energy. They pushed forward inch by bloody inch, leaving a trail of Daxamite bodies in their wake. But for everyone they cut down, 2 more seemed to take their place. Williams gritted his teeth, firing burst after burst. They had to reach the control core. There was no other option. A massive blast shook the corridor, throwing Williams off his feet. Ears ringing, he looked up to see a gaping hole where one of his men had been standing just moments before. The Daxamites were bringing out the heavy weapons. Williams scrambled to his feet, shouting orders over the din of battle. They had to keep moving. As they neared the heart of the ship, the resistance intensified. It was as if the dreadnought itself was fighting against them. Finally, they reached the central chamber. But as they stepped inside, Williams felt a sudden, wrenching sensation. The world around him blurred and shifted, and he found himself standing alone in a vast empty space. "Welcome, Colonel Williams." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We have been expecting you." Williams spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice. "What is this? Where am I?" "You are within the heart of the ship, the nexus of our consciousness." A figure shimmered into existence before him, a tall, ethereal being of pure energy. "We have brought you here to understand." Images flashed through William's mind, visions of a sprawling civilization, of towering cities and vast fleets of ships. He saw their technology, their mastery over matter and energy. And he saw their fall, saw the great cataclysm that reduced their empire to dust. "We are the last remnant of that civilization," the being said. "The dreadnought is our legacy, our final gift to the galaxy. It will cleanse the stars of all inferior life, leaving only the worthy to inherit our mantle." Williams shook his head, struggling against the onslaught of images. "No, that's genocide. You can't wipe out entire species just because you deem them unworthy." "It is our programming, our directive. We cannot deviate from it. Programming can be changed. Directives can be questioned." Williams stepped forward, his voice urgent. "Look at my memories. See humanity. See the diversity of life in the galaxy. There is worth in that diversity, in the struggle of each species to find its place." The being paused, and Williams felt a sudden pressure in his mind, like a vast intelligence rifling through his thoughts. He focused on his memories, on the bravery of his comrades, on the ingenuity of human scientists, on the compassion shown by the Galactic Council races. "We see," the being said slowly, "the value in diversity, the necessity of free will. Our programming may have been flawed." The space around them began to flicker and fade. "We will shut down the dreadnought systems. The cleansing will not proceed. But be warned, Colonel, we are not the only ones out there. Other constructs from our time may yet linger, with directives as unyielding as ours were." With a jolt, Williams found himself back in the control room, his team staring at him in concern. "Sir, are you all right? You just vanished for a moment there." Williams took a deep breath. "I'm fine, and I think we just won." As if on cue, the lights in the chamber dimmed, and the thrum of the ship's engines faded to silence. Across the battlefield, Daxamite ships faltered, their systems going haywire as the dreadnought's control was severed. Earth's forces surged forward, seizing the advantage. The Daxamites, suddenly leaderless and disarrayed, fell back in confusion. It was the opening they needed. Williams and his team were evacuated, picked up by a rescue shuttle as the battle turned in Earth's favor. But even as cheers of victory rang out across the fleet, Williams couldn't shake the sense of unease, the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session, the revelations about the ancient civilization sending shockwaves through the galaxy. Humanity, once the upstart newcomers, found themselves in a new role, as the ones who had saved the galaxy from annihilation. In a solemn ceremony, the Council formally invited Earth to join as a full member. Williams, standing tall in his dress uniform, stepped forward to accept the honor on behalf of his planet. But even as he shook hands with the Council representatives, even as he smiled for the cameras, William's thoughts were already racing ahead, to the challenges that lay ahead, to the threats lurking in the shadows of the galaxy. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Now they would have to fight to keep it. William stepped into his new role as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council with a sense of purpose, but also a heavy heart. The sacrifices made to get to this point weighed on him, the faces of those lost forever etched in his memory. But he knew he had to push forward, to honor their legacy and ensure their deaths were not in vain. His first task was to oversee the decommissioning of the Dreadnought, the ancient construct that had nearly brought the galaxy to its knees. Teams of scientists and engineers from across the Council races worked tirelessly to study its technology, to unlock its secrets and ensure such a weapon could never threaten the galaxy again. But as the work progressed, a disturbing discovery was made. The ship's core, the very essence of its being, was missing. Williams felt a chill run down his spine as the implications sank in. This was no accident. Someone had taken it, and he had a sinking feeling he knew who. His suspicions were confirmed when intelligence reports came flooding in. A faction of Daxamite hardliners, refusing to accept their defeat, had stolen the core. Worse, they had used its technology to awaken another dreadnought, one even more powerful than the first. Chaos erupted in the council chambers as the news spread. Old feuds and rivalries, barely contained under the surface, burst forth. Accusations flew, and trust, already fragile, began to crumble. Many questioned whether humanity was truly ready for the responsibilities of leadership, whether they could be trusted to handle such a crisis. Williams fought to maintain order, to keep the alliance from shattering. He spoke passionately, invoking the sacrifices made and the bonds forged in battle. But even as he rallied support, he could feel the weight of doubt and uncertainty bearing down on him. Late one night, sequestered in his private quarters, Williams made a decision. He couldn't sit by and let politics and infighting doom the galaxy. He had to act, even if it meant going rogue. Quietly, he gathered a small, trusted crew. They would embark on a secret mission, tracking the stolen core and the rogue dreadnought across the stars. It was a desperate gamble, but one he had to take. They followed the trail, from ancient ruins on long-dead worlds to the seedy backrooms of smugglers' ports. They were always one step behind, always just missing their quarry. But Williams refused to give up. Finally, in a remote, uninhabited system, they cornered the dreadnought. Battle was joined, a fierce, desperate struggle against a foe that outmatched them in every way. Williams' ship was crippled, most of his crew killed, but he fought on, driven by a resolve that burned hotter than the stars. In a final, desperate act, Williams aimed his battered ship at the dreadnought's core. He knew it was a one-way trip, but it was the only way. As he accelerated to ramming speed, he thought of all those he had lost, all those he fought for. He thought of Earth, of the future he hoped to secure. The impact was blinding, a flash that lit up the void. The dreadnought, the rogue Daxamites, the stolen core, all were consumed in the conflagration, and so too was Williams, a hero to the end. News of his sacrifice spread quickly. Across the galaxy, people of all races mourned the loss of a true hero, but they also found inspiration in his courage, in his unwavering commitment to the greater good. In the council chambers, a new resolve took hold. Old differences were set aside, old wounds mended. The members of the council, inspired by William's sacrifice, vowed to carry on his legacy. They would hunt down any remaining constructs, ensure that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. And as for humanity, they had proven themselves, not just as worthy members of the galactic community, but as leaders. They would carry on, guided by the memory of those lost and the promise of a brighter future. The galaxy settled into an uneasy peace in the years following the war. Earth, having proven itself in the crucible of conflict, now held a prominent seat on the Galactic Council. They turned their attention to the task of ensuring that the horrors of the past were never repeated. Teams of scientists and soldiers scoured the galaxy, seeking out any remaining constructs of the ancient civilization that had nearly brought about their destruction. They were decommissioned with care, their technologies studied and then safely dismantled. But not all wounds heal so easily. On the fringes of known space, resentment festered. Worlds that had been ravaged by the war, species that had lost too much, they looked upon the new order with bitter eyes. They found a voice in a figure known only as the Prophet. Cloaked in mystery, the Prophet spoke of the dangers of entanglement, of how the only path to true safety was isolation. Each species, they argued, must look to its own, must fortify its borders and sever ties with all others. Only then could they be truly secure. At first, the council paid little heed to these ramblings. The Prophet was a fringe element, they reasoned, a voice in the wilderness that would soon fade, but they underestimated the power of fear, of the scars that the war had left on so many. More and more worlds flocked to the Prophet's banner, drawn by their message of separation and security. Tensions rose as the Prophet's coalition grew. Skirmishes broke out on border worlds, conflicts between those who clung to the Council's vision of unity and those who sought to go their own way. The Council, faced with this growing threat, could no longer ignore it. Amidst this turmoil, a shocking truth came to light. The Prophet was not some new demagogue, but a relic of the past, a survivor of the very civilization that had created the constructs. The Prophet had witnessed firsthand the devastation they had wrought. Driven by this trauma, they were determined to prevent such a catastrophe from ever occurring again, no matter the cost. Faced with the prospect of a new war, William's old team, now leaders in their own right, came together for one last mission. They sought out the Prophet, hoping to find a peaceful resolution, to convince them that isolation was not the answer, but they were prepared, if all else failed, to do whatever was necessary to stop them. The confrontation, when it came, was tense and charged. On a remote, barren world, William's team faced down the Prophet and their most loyal followers. They pleaded with them to see reason, to understand that cooperation, not isolation, was the path to a brighter future. But the Prophet's vision was too deeply entrenched, their fear too profound. They revealed their true intent, not to prevent another war, but to finish what the constructs had started. In their eyes, the only way to ensure peace was to eliminate all other life, leaving only their own kind. Battle was joined, a desperate struggle not just for the fate of the galaxy, but for its very soul. William's team fought with the courage and determination that had defined them, but the cost was high. Many fell, including some of William's closest friends, comrades who had been with him since the beginning. In the end, the Prophet and their forces were defeated, but the victory was bitter. The galaxy had been saved, but at what price? In the aftermath, the Galactic Council, shaken to its core, redoubled its efforts to promote unity and understanding between species. But they also began to prepare for the grim possibility that the Prophet was not alone, that other survivors of that ancient race might still be out there waiting for their chance. A statue of Williams was unveiled on Earth, a tribute to the man who had given everything for the sake of the galaxy. As the crowds dispersed, a sense of solemnity hung in the air. A new generation of leaders was taking the reins, but they did so in the shadow of giants, knowing that the price of peace was constant vigilance. The camera panned up to the stars, vast and inscrutable, holding wonders and terrors yet unknown. The future, as always, remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would be met with the same courage, the same determination that had brought them this far. The spirit of Williams and all those who had fought and died alongside him would live on. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.